Okay, so let's get hyped because the Percy Jackson show just dropped its first 2 episodes on Disney Plus, and my goodness, I was not ready for how much I was going to enjoy it. Seriously, we've all been waiting so long, at least book readers and long-suffering movie fans have been waiting so long for an adaptation that's both good and also does justice to the source material. And honestly, just as an aside, because we're going to break down the episode in more depth as we go, I do think that this show does that so far from what we've seen. I've seen a couple of haters on places like Reddit, but for the most part, I think it's been received quite well. The first season itself is currently sitting on a 95% score for critics on Rotten Tomatoes and a 93% audience score, as of recording this. Which in my eyes, with only the first 2 episodes released, is a very good sign. And so yeah, today we're going to begin breaking it all down, starting with episode 1, because I gotta milk this bad boy into 2 videos. So we're going to start off today looking at the first episode of our new era of Percy Jackson. Season 1, Episode 1, I accidentally vaporized my pre-algebra teacher. But before we go any further than that, just some general thoughts that don't really fit into the overall breakdown. I think for the most part, I found the effects to be decent. Some moments were definitely better than others though, but for the most part it's looking pretty good, and if it gets a second season and does really well, I expect the budget's going to go up and we're going to see even more improvement there. And also the acting. For the most part, the acting was fine. I think that the adults specifically were very good, but I wouldn't say that anybody was great. Just good. I was worried initially that Sally Jackson's acting from the trailer was kind of bad, but in the end it did turn out to be better than I expected. And the kids were all pretty good too. You of course still have those moments where lines do sound cringe or aren't acted quite right, but of course they're inexperienced and they did make up for it with moments of greatness too. So hopefully they continue to develop as the show continues throughout the years, otherwise ugh. But yeah, let's just jump into things, shall we? Oh, and also this is a book spoilers review, so be warned, there be spoilers here. Okay, so we start off with a little bit of narration to set the scene, and I really like that it's Percy reciting the opening lines of the book. I very much enjoyed that. I'm not always a huge fan of a one-to-one line adaptation, as in just reading straight from the book. I mean, sometimes there are important lines that you do need, but for the most part, I think the script should be tailored to convey the original intent of the story or the scene, whilst also allowing the actor a bit more freedom. Because sometimes written dialogue doesn't always come across all that well as a spoken line. But this does a job really well, serving as an introduction to the characters and to the world. Because let's be real, having to sit through all of these scenes with no narration at all, simply just setting the scene, I think it would have gotten dull really fast. So they made the right call here and it works. And yeah, throughout the narration we get a glimpse into Percy's life. It shows that he's always been a bit different. He'd be considered by normal people as a disturbed, unwell, mentally ill sort of kid, and that's by the majority of his teachers and his peers. As a young kid, we have a teacher try to rescue him from, well, I assume that they thought he was going to jump off the roof, when actually he'd just seen a creature on another rooftop. And also I love that they're showing off blackjack early. With the books, I think it's clear that Rick probably added and changed things as he went along, but with the benefit of having all the source material laid out in front of you, you can work things through. You can set up future reveals with moments like this, because it just seems like a clever thing to do from a filmmaking perspective. It gives the show-only audience something to notice and be excited about when he does return, and it also gets the book crowd hyped too because you already know who this character is. Anyway, young Percy then gets sent to a counsellor, who tells him it's not normal to see this kind of thing, and to tell somebody if he does again. And then it just keeps happening to Percy. He sees creatures that are there 1 second, then gone the next. And, well, I guess he used to try to tell people about them, which left him alone with no real friends. And I'll come back to this, but I do feel like the tone is way more serious in the show about stuff like that. Like in the book, yeah, they touch on that negative stuff, but it's in a much more lighthearted way. Like, you don't worry, I'm a loser. I stand up to my bullies. My mum's being abused by my smelly stepdad, but it's all good. I'm dealing with it, etc., etc. But here, I feel like they actually show the impact it's having on him, which feels like a more realistic take. And in my eyes, it makes him more sympathetic as a protagonist, which is impressive because even in the book, he is massively sympathetic. We then cut to the present and he's hanging with Grover, his best and only friend, and just to show off how uncool they are, they're playing the Mythomagic card game in the cafeteria, in public, and they get bullied of course. And honestly, this is very, very true to life sadly, but hey, their friendship is wholesome, and once again, it makes Percy seem a lot more sympathetic. Then we cut to the present day at the Met, where Percy's class is on a field trip. And we have Mr. Brunner talking up the Age of Heroes and Greek mythology, talking about how they provide insight into the human condition pretty much. Feels like he was mostly just hinting stuff to Percy. So, at this point, do they already know that he's a son of Poseidon, or do they just know he's a demigod? It has been a while since I read the book, but surely if they knew he was a special Big 3 child, they'd be working a little bit harder to protect him, if they knew who he was. if they knew that Zeus is going to come after him for stealing the bolt. And I mean, how does Hades know who he is? Because doesn't he send the Furies? Doesn't he send Dodds? By this point, the thefts have happened, right? So Poseidon would surely know. Wouldn't he feel like he should protect Percy? Send a bit more? Send some Cyclopses maybe? Even if it was just to clear his own name and prove that his son did not steal things and stop the God War? No? Oh well. It doesn't really matter, but to me, having read the books, I am a little bit confused. Maybe someone can clear that up for me. Like, I do feel like it would be rare for Mr. Brunner / Chiron, as we'll call him from now on, to make an appearance to a demigod like that, right? He surely doesn't go around to everyone's schools. Anyway, we then get a look at Percy's dyslexia, which once again feels like it's presented in a heavier way than it was in the book, before we have a little bit of a flashback to see the bond between Sally and Percy, and the reason behind his name. And I'll be honest, for me this was a little too expositional. I'm not sure it was completely needed. But at the same time, I did note that maybe they're setting up Medusa for a far more sympathetic portrayal based on Sally's words and opinions. She says that not everybody who looks like a monster is a monster, and vice versa. And this led me to the Wikipedia of Medusa, and if you dive into some of the accounts, yeah, I think she does deserve a bit better and a more sympathetic portrayal. She gets murdered in her sleep by the OG Perseus, which seems unfair and unsporting if you're a Greek hero. And the reason she's like that to begin with is because she was potentially sexually assaulted by Poseidon, depending on the version of the story you subscribe to, and then she was punished for it by Athena, whose temple she was assaulted in. It's a pretty heavy topic to tackle since she will encounter 2 of their children this season, and I know it would be book divergent in terms of her portrayal, but I think it would be a better way to handle it if I'm being honest. She can still be an antagonist to them, but maybe more of an angry, bitter person who's wrongfully trying to punish the children of her tormentors, as opposed to a depraved serial killer who just kills lots of people anyway. You get me? Like, in the book, she kills a lot of people before they even turn up. But here, I think that can go with that she sees these kids who are important to those that hurt her, and so she wants to kill them to get back at the gods. I find that to be a far more interesting and positive way to frame things, and after that, nothing else about the canon even needs to change. It doesn't change the plot, but who knows. We then cut back to the present, where Percy gets bullied for weirdly calling out for his mum in the middle of the museum, for some reason. And yeah, like, honestly, I feel like most people would laugh at that in my experience. Mrs. Dodds then craps on him, and then Chiron stands up for him and gives him the Riptide pen, as Percy broke his pencil. Honestly though, Chiron giving him the pen at this moment, as opposed to in the book where he throws it to him when he gets attacked, I mean, it feels a bit convenient, doesn't it? Especially since he and Grover do not know that Dodds is a Fury and is about to attack Percy. We then cut to the outside of the museum, where Grover and Percy are discussing how Grover thinks that Percy needs to sort of just get over being bullied, which is a weird stance, but I guess Grover just wants him to keep his head down. And also, it was very relatable watching them mix and match sandwiches, like their fillings and stuff. My god, that takes me back to my school days. Anyway, they get bullied again, and Percy goes to... Well, it looked like he was going to push Nancy. Like, straight up, I think he was going to attack her anyway, so he kind of is guilty anyway. But before he could, in an example of pretty poor CGI, she flies backwards and lands in the fountain. So that's Percy using his demigod powers unknowingly. And here we finally get into some action. Mrs. Dodds starts talking to Percy telepathically, threatening him, and of course nobody can see this happening because of the mist, before she transforms. And yeah, she actually looked pretty cool in her CGI form, and then she jumps on him, before instantly dying because of the Riptide pen conveniently activating itself. Yeah, not gonna lie, this scene was very lame. It was done much better in the movie, and reading back, also much better in the book. It's just, here he just falls down and she jumps on him. That's pretty lame. That's the first bit of true action in the show. It needed to be more gripping than that, but maybe that's just me. Grover and Chiron then team up to gaslight poor Percy about what happened, as the other mortals don't even remember Mrs. Dodds because of the mist. Moving on, we then see Percy and Grover having a meeting with the school staff in what seems to be a Godfather-inspired scene. Also, Rick cameo just sitting there on the left of the shot. Love to see it. Anyway, Grover intentionally screws him over to get him expelled, which further crushes Percy, as his only friend supposedly just tossed him under the bus to get out of trouble. And for the casual audience who haven't read the books, and thus they don't know Grover's being set up to be a key part of the story, this yet again goes a long way to making Percy seem like a massively sympathetic figure. And so yeah, Percy's expelled, and he's sent home from Yancey Academy, and has a little talk with Chiron again that hints at things to come, and just also fills up time in the episode. We then finally get a look at Percy's home life. And honestly, I was dreading this coming into it. As these sorts of things, abusive stuff on screen, it does make me feel very uncomfortable and icky. Like, the whole reason Sally stays with Gabe and everything, and the things she has to go through, ugh. But here I was mega surprised, because it seems like they really softened up Gabe in the show. He's less aggressive, he's less intimidating, he's less stinky and weird and ugly. Instead, it seems like she's just married to some loser neckbeard basement dwelling no-hoper. I'm curious to see how that evolves. Instead of being this terrorized woman, it's almost like she just openly hates on him. She pushes back on him in the same way that Percy does and makes fun of him. She gets fired up at him. She straight up yells at him. It's very different to how I perceive their dynamic in the book. And honestly, I think it's for the best, because if they all know who Percy is, the gods know who Percy is, and Poseidon knows who Percy is, and Poseidon knows who Sally is, he lets them stay with this abusive man. And whilst it's in character for a god to simply not care or do anything to help them because, the gods are habitual deadbeats, I feel like it would be very unrealistic for Percy to ever make up with his dad and put him on a pedestal and strive for his approval, because this all-powerful god did not do shit to help against this abusive man who hurts his mum. At least that's how a fresh audience would perceive it, I think. And it's kind of how I perceive it as well. So I'm thinking they're going to change parts of that story. Maybe it's going to suddenly get worse off screen as the show progresses to justify him getting Medusa'd at the end, which would explain why Poseidon never intervened, because it progressed to physical violence so quickly. But yeah, it's a really different dynamic, and I honestly don't know how to feel about it in terms of my personal enjoyment as of right now, but I think it's probably a smarter play if you actually want people to like Poseidon. Hell, at this rate, maybe they won't even kill off Gabe at all, maybe she'll just leave him. Right now, I feel like keeping Gabe non-abusive is the only way to make it believable that Percy could ever bond with Poseidon after it's all gone down. That being said though, I thought the guy playing Gabe was really good. He had good chemistry with both Percy and Sally. This scene and their dynamic and how she convinces him to let them take the car with them both, screaming at him, bribing him, threats of watching the basketball without him, made me laugh. And honestly, the way they interacted did make me think that at some level, she is kind of fond of him. She likes watching the basketball with him. It's such a strange and different dynamic, I just don't know how to feel. Like, I enjoy how both the Jacksons just dunk on this guy for being shit at life. It gave me a good giggle, but at the same time, are they still going to kill him at the end? She seems to enjoy him, if nothing else. Enjoy dunking on him. But yeah, there's lots of cool moments in the mother-son reunion scene, honestly, the blue candy. And also, did anybody else pick up blue candy in preparation for these episode releases, or was it just me? And also, there's more Percy emotional depth. He's talking about his fears, his insecurities, and I was actually surprised how hard they pushed that. The books were far more happy-go-lucky, as I've said a lot in this video. I'm really liking this added depth. Like I said, it really works to add more emotional stakes to the whole thing, and to Percy's arc specifically. They then head off, and Percy has some sort of dream. Is that Kronos in the dream? I expect it would be Kronos, although I'm not entirely 100% sure. But I think it would be, because you have to set him up early with hints and whatnot, considering he ends up being the main villain of the franchise. We then see Sally's been crying, getting the audience ready for that emotional gut punch of him having to leave her behind and her getting minotaured, and we get some more wholesome vibes for them as they race to the house. Calm before the storm sort of vibes. And it's at this point that we get the big emotional conversation where it's revealed to Percy at long last that all his issues at school stem from the fact that he's a demigod. That the reason they come to the beach cabin every year is because it's where Sally met Percy's dad. That gods and monsters are real, and that he is not crazy. And once again, felt like way more of an emotional moment here. Although I did appreciate that they would occasionally cut through that seriousness with a good bit of humour, like when Percy gets confused and asks if Sally had fallen in love with God, as in God, the Abrahamic God, or maybe Jesus. That got a good chuckle out of me, and for something that was new, added, felt very Percy. Felt like it came straight off the page. But yeah, beyond showing how much this ordeal had affected Percy with him legit thinking he was mentally ill, this was just padding out the runtime for me, I guess. By this point, I was really keen for them to do the Minotaur chase and head to Camp Half-Blood. Maybe I'm impatient, but yeah, I'm just eager to see everything, Anyway, Grover then arrives in full anxiety mode, and with goat legs exposed. And the goat legs actually didn't look too bad. I mean, I guess if Narnia can do them in the mid-2000s, you'd hope they would look good like 18 years later. My god.
That means I'm...
Anyway, I really love the acting of Grover. Like, it wasn't what I was expecting really, but it did make me laugh. He's a very awkward sort of person, and it contrasts well with Sally and Percy in that scene. Anyway, he reveals they're out of time, and they need to get out of there before there's another attack, and so they all hop in the car, and off they go to Camp Half-Blood, with more explanations and exposition along the way. The key takeaway here being that Grover couldn't sense who Mrs. Dodds was, which was unusual, and hints to the casual audience that something great is at work. But yeah, it also explains who Grover is, his role as Percy's guide, and also how regular humans are usually unable to perceive the magical world at all. They also explain the existence of Camp Half-Blood, and that everything the two of them have done together has simply been training for Percy's future, which, when you think about it, is a damn moment. I really do get why Percy would be mad. Imagine straight up being told that every single interaction you had with your friend was all specifically tailored to educate you secretly, that it wasn't real. That would hurt. And then the Minotaur attacks, and the absolute menace, the absolute mad lad is wearing tighty whities. I get that it's so that the audience and the reader does not have to see or read a description of a bull penis, but damn. I do wonder what the lore behind him wearing those is. Like, did he go to a shop once and see them and think, I'd look good in these? Sally, being a total giga chad in this adaptation, then rams him with the car before they spin out and crash, and luckily, somehow everybody's fine. Somehow even the Minotaur, who was smashed in a head-on collision with another car, is also fine. But anyway, we then get a glimpse at the tree, as in the tree, the important boundary tree, before it's revealed that Sally can't enter the camp, as only demigods can cross. No monsters, no mortals. And this scene was also much sadder than I kind of expected it to be. I feel like the addition of rain instantly makes any scene 10 times sadder. And this scene was indeed very sad. I thought some of the dialogue was a bit weird, like when she forces Grover to swear to protect Percy, but yeah, their goodbye was wholesome and sad. And then she tries to buy them time by playing the part of a matador fighting the Minotaur, who easily beats her because, of course he would. He's not an idiot bull, he's a straight up monster. And it seems like he's about to attack on Titan her until she randomly dissolves, which, well, I guess that would make it clear for the audience that she isn't dead, but then again, this show is for kids, and Star Wars has killed people in the past by having them dissolve into nothing. So, I guess it's a little bit ambiguous to the casual viewer what happened. Maybe he stole her soul, they might be thinking. But I do think that ambiguity is the right choice in the end, because it makes the audience eager to see what happens next and ups the stakes massively. Percy then whips out his sword, he fights and beats the Minotaur, maybe too easily. Like, he pretty much kicks his ass. Like, yes, you don't want to draw things out. You want it quick and easy so you can get to the camp and the next episode. But still, maybe add a little bit more danger to the fight. Also, the Minotaur noises, I'm almost certain those are stock noises from Jurassic Park. They are surely not a custom job for the show. And so yeah, he wins, he collapses, he's found and welcomed to the camp as he blacks out, and the episode ends. Hell yeah, good episode. When I watched it, felt like it flew by. A bit exposition heavy for my taste, but it was the first episode, so what are you gonna do? But luckily it did come out with the second episode at the same time, so you watch them back to back and it makes the exposition feel less. It's less in your face, because you have that follow-up in the camp, and that's where the plot really gets started. I think it was a very good decision to release them both at once, but yeah, next review's coming at you tomorrow. Until then, these have just been my opinions, and now I'd like to hear yours. What did you think of episode 1? You like it, hate it? I'm curious for your thoughts, so make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and let me know.